You're listening to the Slavic Literature Pod, your shelf-help guide to all things Slavic. I'm Cameron Lalana, and if you want to learn more about Slavic literature, art, and culture, then you're in the right place. A long time ago in this podcast, I was chatting with Philip Metres. I think this was our episode about Arseny Tarkovsky, and I joked that our expanding purview would eventually necessitate our second name change to the Slavic and Central Asian podcast, or maybe Slavic and Near Slavic World podcast. Phil suggested that we just future-proof it and go for the Literature Podcast. Well, we aren't quite there yet, but today we'll temporarily become the Central Asian Literature Podcast as we talk about Akhmet Baitursynov's poetry collection, Mosquito. Originally published in 1911, Mosquito represents several things: Baitursynov's most political poems, his hopes and despairs for a Kazakh nation, an attempt at a new literary Kazakh language, and so on. To help us better understand this collection today, I'm joined by Jake Zawlacki, who translated the collection. Jake, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Cameron. I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Jake here is a writer, translator, and scholar who currently teaches at the University of San Diego. He's the editor of Conversations with Todd McFarlane and Conversation with Denys Cowan, as well as the translator of the first English language edition of Mosquito, which we're talking about here today. Zawlacki holds degrees from Louisiana State University, University of San Diego, and Stanford University. His creative work has been published in the Saturday Evening Post, The Journal, Citron Review, and Roanoke Review. Before we talk about this actual collection and the poems within, Jake, I was hoping we could start this conversation with a little bit of context for the audience about who Akhmet Baitursynov was.
Yeah, Akhmet was a Renaissance man in all forms of the word. He was a linguist, he was a poet, he was a translator himself, an educator. Today, he's regarded as the teacher of the nation in Kazakhstan. He adapted the Kazakh spoken language into written by adapting the Uyghur or Arabic script. He's done a ton of stuff.
Absolutely. And so this, like I mentioned, this was published in 1911. I was wondering if you could give us a little bit more insight into the political and cultural context that this is being published in. At this point, Kazakhstan today was part of the Russian Empire at the time, which is about to head into, just a couple of years down the line, into a period of attempted autonomy through the Alash Orda government before it is, of course, seized and incorporated into the Soviet Union.
Yeah, so this first comes out in 1911, and it's kind of, the Russian Empire is creaking, let's say, right? It's not at the same kind of strength it had before. He had a history. His father was exiled for 25 years with his brother as well for denying a Russian general early on in his life for about to committing a pogrom against his village. So he has this kind of anti-authoritarian or rebellious streak in his family as well. So he's writing these poems. Some of them are censored by the Tsarist administration that come out in 1911. And then, of course, 1917 happens and the empire's down. The collection's then republished in 1922. So in that 10 or 11 year span, a lot of things have changed, right? We have Tsarist censors and now we have Soviet censors. So some things don't quite make it. Eventually, it's this anti-imperial, anti-Tsarist sentiment that gets Akhmet thrown into a gulag in the 30s and then executed for this, anti-Russian ideology. But the Alash Orda happens in 1917 when there's kind of no state governing what is now Kazakhstan. So Baitursynovov is one of the key leaders, along with a couple of the other Alash Orda members, and what they refer to now as a proto-state of the boundaries we would recognize today as just Kazakhstan. And it's good for about 2 years until the Soviets kind of reclaim it and call it the Kyrgyz Autonomous Republic.
And could you define Alash? What does that mean to them?
Yeah, Alash is like this, it's a literary mythological figure, and by saying we are from Alash, it's like we're the descendants of this. I guess the equivalent might be the Odyssey or some kind of Greek mythological figure. For Americans, it might be George Washington, right? Something of that kind of stature. So to call yourself the Order of Alash, the people of Alash, is to predate Tsarist interference, of Russian interference, of kind of anything, and say, oh, we're going back to the ancient kind of ideas of Kazakh people.
And they had the Alash Orda. They have this kind of interesting political program. Maybe you could talk about that a little bit in the introduction of the book. I wonder if you could lay that out in the context of kind of what they were trying to create before it becomes part of the Soviet Union.
Yeah, it's pretty radical for 1917 because they wanted to institute a national alphabet. They wanted to have national literature, newspapers. They wanted a democratic society. They wanted to change the ages of marriage for girls. They saw girls as key in a developing society, which all seem, like very progressive for the time,
Hmm.
right? And I think a lot of those are adopted by Soviet stuff, but of course, they're Akhmet and the other Alashadar are seeing it from a nationalist perspective. They say Kazakh people should be governing themselves in a democratic way over this Kazakh land.
Moving away from kind of the historical context for a second, you as you mentioned in the introduction of the book, you have an interesting introduction to Baitursynov when you were serving as a Peace Corps member in Mongolia, which I'm always happy to bring up. I was an AmeriCorps member, like the little sibling
Oh, cool.
organization. So I always love to talk about that. So maybe you could talk a bit about your relationship to learning about Baitursynov and your time as a Peace Corps volunteer.
Yeah. It took me a long time to get to Akhmet and the Alashwada for sure, but I was a Peace Corps volunteer in 2015, and I moved to Mongolia. I was in Mongolia. I was in Darhan, Mongolia, learning Mongolian. I was in one of the second biggest city there, and then my site was Bayanolgi, which is the far western province, and there it was 90% roughly, I think, Kazakh ethnically. And I realized if I wanted to really engage with the people there and the culture, I needed to learn Kazakh instead of Mongolian, even though they all spoke Mongolian. The professional language is Mongolian. Everyone was bilingual at least,
Mhm.
if not trilingual with Russian as well. So I learned I learned Kazakh, a
Hmm.
very broken form of it, and for about 2 years. After that, I did a Fulbright in the Kyrgyz Republic, and my Kazakh kind of translates into Kyrgyz. There's some different, vowel changes, a lot of words very similar and overlap and all that. After I was in the Kyrgyz Republic, I did a summer at Nazarbayev University where I was learning Kazakh again, trying to get it better. And that's when I really heard about the Alash Oda, and I heard that they were kind of like these rebels, even within Kazakh culture today. They're still kind of radical, right?
Hmm.
And a lot of the Kazakh students there were talking about them as like these kind of vaunted figures, right?
Hmm.
And I wasn't too familiar with them, but it had been stuck in the back of my mind. So again, after that, I went to Stanford for a master's in Russian, Eastern European, Eurasian literature. Did a master's degree. The thesis was on the first Kazakh animation film. I worked for a couple of years. I went to Louisiana State University for a master's of fine arts, and while I was there, the itch was there as my language was getting worse and worse. I said, I want to keep this going. I want to do something with this. I decided to look at works from the Al-Ashwada authors. So then that's when I landed on Akhmet, because I was blown away that someone was not only educating all these people, but that he just invented the alphabet for a language that was primarily spoken for thousands of years. And he just seemed like such a fascinating person. So to get his most political collection out there, he had done some other poems too, but to
Hmm.
get that out there seemed really important to represent him.
Yeah, and you as an attempt to keep your language skills going, this is an interesting one to start with because this is already translating from Kazakh to English can be pretty difficult as you outline,
Yeah.
but this is compounded by the style and grammar that, and as you say, Batrusinov is pioneering here.
Yeah, I had no idea what I was getting into. It was like it would have been so much easier to try and translate contemporary Kazakh
Hmm.
language versus this older stuff for a lot of reasons. So the first is because he's writing it, there's not really a written body of work in Kazakh literature. So he's very much inventing like Kazakh literature and what that means. So he's pulling from Arabic, Farsi, and Turkish sources. He has a couple Russian loanwords, but he's pretty careful not to use Russian in them. He is writing, he's like using rhyme in a way that we just simply can't replicate in English at all because it's agglutinative like Russian, Slavic languages. So you can pull it off at the end of lines very easily. He's playing with structure and syntax in poetry, which generally you would never do in kind of spoken Kazakh, right? And even more than that, it's written in a literary way that varies for contemporary speakers if they could even understand it. So for example, I'd give it to friends. I'd show like, hey, what's he saying here, right? They say, I don't really know what he's saying, but I get the gist, right?
Mm.
It's like, yeah, that makes sense when you're reading it, but to
Mm.
translate it, you got to know what he's saying exactly, right? So it
Right.
adds all these different nuances and difficulties in translating this word because it's not only old, not only has a lot of old words, loan words that aren't used anymore, but written in this literary way that's almost unrecognizable. And I think what highlights this is on his 120th, 25th anniversary, they released some of his old articles that he wrote for Kazakh, the journal that he was a contributor to, and they had to basically update them to modern language. So if you can't republish them in the contemporary without people not knowing, that shows you the big difference, right? I think it's probably similar to like Middle or Old English for us. We would maybe get the gist, but we don't quite know what these words are. And yeah, it was a huge, I mean, I had dictionaries all over my desk because I was trying to figure it out. It's a very, very slow process for sure.
Slow, but seems like rewarding. This is interesting. As I was going through it, there you pointed out that you've kind of picked it because of it's a lot of political poetry, which is interesting. But there's a pretty wide array of topics that are being covered in here. I see it's like some pieces of mythology, polemic pieces, a lot of pessimism, mixed with cautious hope about the future of the Kazakh people. How would you characterize this collection? Now that you spend so much time with it?
Yeah, I mean, I think to someone unfamiliar, they might see it as just kind of a haphazard, mashing of a bunch of different things. But the underlying theme I see is urgency. And even if it's mythology, even if it's a translation, all these things are put there for a reason, right? If he has a short fable from Hoja Nasir, like he's talking about himself, right? He's talking about his struggle of going it. If he has a letter to his mom, he's very personal. If he's talking about a translation of like the ass and the owl, right? Who's the ass? It's the people he's so frustrated with that he can't get to wake up to do this stuff. I mean, one of the Mirjak Abdullatolov, one of his poetry collections is "Wake Up Kazakh," right? It's very explicit. In the Mosquito, the whole idea is to wake up this sleeping populace that needs to to realize, to self-actualize if they're going to become a nation versus just being absorbed into the Soviet Union or into the next Russian form, whatever that would be. So yeah, I see a lot of urgency throughout his work. There's some hope, like you're saying. I think a lot of frustration, a lot of anger, sadness. But I don't know. You read it now, and it's happened. What do you hope for? It happened, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point about the personalness, there's this kind of pair, which I kind of read as a pair, although I don't necessarily know if that was the intent. Was a letter from my brother-in-law and then reply to a letter lamenting, which are kind of seem to be in conversation of like on one hand lamenting the apartness of the people and this kind of scathing. Maybe scathing is not the right word, but this reply, which is like pointing the finger both ways, that this line, I hide, I lie down, you hide, you lie down, who will do the work?
He's
complicit
in it.
Yeah, exactly. That was what struck me is it's not just this kind of like looking out in despair, but also what am I doing here, which is potent throughout the collection as well.
Yeah, and you get the sense too in a lot of these poems that he's getting a lot of pushback from people too. That this is not just a universal, he's not riding in on a white horse and spreading the good word. It's like a lot of people are like, hey man, we don't want to do this, right? We have our own social structures. We want to go back to that. We want to be left alone. Just let us do our thing. And he's saying, no, you need to change. You need to adapt into this new modern world. And of course, it's problematic because everyone's vision of a whole future is problematic. But it's not lauded or accepted in the way that we might think today.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is really interesting because he's kind of examining I'm struck by sometimes when I'm reading I guess poetry or literature of nascent nationalism, you do see a lot of overtures to the people as a whole, but I think it's interesting here too that at times Baitursynov will kind of break down like the elements of the society in which he's, on one hand, like you've got the unlucky peasant, which I think can be broadened out, but or Kazakh'ness, which has this line, was it these words, this letter I write, with sorrow, no value left, the lost Kazakh, rich worry wealth, educated worry rank, little worry left for the people. You see this frustration, like on one level you'll see like the unlucky peasant is about these empty words people keep giving as a kind of maybe a way to move forward. On Kazakh'ness, you see this frustration with I guess maybe you can call it the intelligentsia in a way. Which is really interesting to, even though I'd say it's light, it's not light, but it's not delved into, but still you can see that analysis present.
Yeah. He's giving these critiques from like within as opposed to without, right? I think there is this like hierarchy that you often see in these things, like, oh, listen to us, the elitist hierarchy. Listen to us, we'll figure it out. We'll tell you what to do. Just follow along. We'll make it work. And he's saying, no, we're all screwed up. We're all worried about the wrong things. Our priorities are incorrect, and there's no way to really save it unless we all like do this, right? I mean, like it's the boat on rocking waves. This ship that just seems like to have no captain. That a captain couldn't even work if it was there.
And I want to go back to kind of the beginning a little bit with the very first poem and the significance of the title of this collection itself, Mosquito.
Yeah, so Mosquito is loaded to a degree in Kazakh culture. My master's thesis was about the first Kazakh animation film, which is titled Why the Swallow's Tail is Forked. I'm pretty sure there's a Russian version of it as well. It's very, very old. In this thesis, I talk about, I try and chase it, right? It's like Circassian, it goes to Ireland, it's in, Hebrew tales, it's all kinds of different things. But in Kazakh culture, the mosquito is so pronounced that it's the central enemy of this little 10-minute animation film, because you have this mosquito going to get this drop of blood from this nomadic child and then giving it to this dragon king who's going to take over. For him to position himself as the mosquito is so unusual, right? Because you wouldn't say, oh, I'm going to come bring you this new way of looking at the world, but I'm going to do it as an enemy. Like, you're going to see me as an enemy the whole time I do it. And it's, I think, really, maybe it's like, I don't know. Let me think about this. It's humble in a way because he's like the smallest possible thing. What happens to gadflies like Socrates, right? They get swatted.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
like that's what happens to him too, in this really like crude, vulgar way. He's murdered for it. But I think he knows that's good. That's coming anyway. And it's why I'm perpetually like in awe of his like foresight. I don't even know if it's foresight or just hopefulness in a way, because to think that a guy from San Diego, California is going to translate your stuff and it's going to come out over 100 years later is really wild, But I think he kind of knew something like this was going to happen in a way, because he's not writing for his people. As I talked about in the introduction, according to a Soviet census, less than 4% of Kazakhs were literate in 1920. So who's he writing for? It's got to be the future. I think the intelligentsia, they're all reading his articles. They know what he thinks, but why do it in a poem? They're either being transmitted orally from friend to friend, or it's just that it's kind of into the void, right? He wants it to exist, but he knows that it probably can't happen right now.
Yeah. Which as you note about this hopefulness, I think you can see that in a lot of the pieces which draw a little bit more on mythology, which are usually more polemic pieces trying to convey a moral, like this hope that this moral will be read and inculcated into children of the future. And a mixture of these ones, of which are, I think, some original, some you've got adapted from Pushkin and Lermontov. There was one, I forget the name of it, but it's basically an attempt at sort of like a rhyme, something to tell children. That one, I think that's an original one.
Yeah, lullaby, to calm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's an interesting, yeah, as you say, it's this interesting combo to have. I do in this collection. One of the first things you'll note as you read it is that these pieces are published both in English, and I think it's preceded by the Kazakh. Mm-hmm. What led to the decision to have both of those sitting side by side?
Yeah, I mean, I think for translation, it's always good, especially for poetry, to see the structure of poems, even if you don't understand the language. You can just see how I'm trying to replicate that same structure, because that's very important. But secondly, I wanted to preserve the Kazakh texts in a way that can be accessed from people outside of Kazakhstan, right? I mean, this is kind of the best way to see it all. And from Western society is to buy this book. You get to see the Kazakh, thing. And I know at some point it's going to be in Latin characters. I can't read Latin characters, so I want to also preserve Cyrillic characters, probably just for my own edification, right? So I can keep it.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, the Kazakh language has gone through so many adaptations. Like, he originally wrote this in his adapted Arabic script. So that I thought about publishing that, but I said, no one's going to be able to read it, right? Because no one, that's kind of defeating the purpose.
Yeah.
So I think by capturing it in the Cyrillic, which is how it was published in '89, seems to kind of get at his like the confrontation with Russian culture at the same
Mm.
time, right?
I think I already talked a little bit about this, but you do have pieces in here which are also adaptations from other authors, Pushkin, Lermontov, others that are translated into Kazakh. How do you see the we've talked a little bit about it, but how do you see their inclusions, their purpose in this collection?
Yeah, I think he's taking a lot of notes from Pushkin and thinking about how to create a national literature. And so, like Pushkin was translating from French a lot, right, and bringing it into Russian. And I think he's kind of legitimizing Kazakh in the same way. Like you might be surprised to read a political collection like this and see so many from so many Russian authors who he's supposedly kind of like pushing against, right? But I think by including them, he's getting at greater truths, which poetry can do, and they capture just Kazakh as like a literature. You say, yeah, okay, well, when we bring them into Kazakh language, now it becomes a real thing. And what's fascinating about him, which I have never seen anyone else do this, at the end of these translations, oftentimes he'll add his own addendums in verse, which is so strange, right? that you're kind of adding on to your own thing. And he'll literally say, like, I'm not quite sure what this means, but here's what my interpretation is. Or I think for Geese, I'd love to read that in a second.
Yeah,
Where
absolutely.
at the end he'll say, like, I've said too much. I don't want to
Mm.
say anymore because he doesn't want to get in trouble, right?
Right,
Because he can't say it any more explicitly without pissing people off.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is interesting. Maybe this is just in my head because another episode I'm preparing for right now is about burgeoning Ukrainian moderate like literalisms of around the same era. But it seems that when you're reading a fair number of times, I've been approached. Let's call it nascent nationalist literature. This attempt at nation creation. One of the mentalities that can be taken is this overture towards other kind of recognized canons, so to speak, and this kind of
Yeah.
attempt to sometimes draw in as like a okay, we need this education too to start building like the great literatures that are recognized are built on these ones, or also we want to be in conversation with these as well. I mean, they're all responding to it, so why can't we add in, why can't we take this thing that everyone kind of has legitimized already, and why can't our commentary and our thoughts on it be as legitimate and taken as seriously?
Yeah, exactly. And another one is horse, right? Where he's translating, but the horse is more central to Kazakh culture than it is Russian, right? So it almost feels more Kazakh in a way, which is really strange to take a translation and then spin it to where it's, oh yeah, this is like more integral to our culture than it is the one I'm borrowing it from. So yeah, it's a way of legitimizing like just Kazakh culture too, by saying, oh yeah, see their obsession with the horse, like yeah, we're even more obsessed with the horse, right? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, what's that? Oh God, did you ever watch it was Invincible, see what they need to mimic a fraction of our power?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and, well, you mentioned one to read was it Geese or Goose, I
Yeah,
forget.
yeah.
Yeah, maybe you could share that one, maybe a couple other pieces that really struck you. And of course, feel free to read them, share some thoughts on them.
Yeah, I'd love to. That'd be awesome. I have a couple noted here.
Yeah.
Okay. Geese. And this was initially Ivan Krylov's Russian version that he adapted. Okay, geese. With a long, strong stick, a peasant drove the geese to the city. Pushing the poor creatures, beating, he hurried them to the market that day. The pensive peasant observed, thought, wondered if his guilt be untrue. To the day market, hoping for lots of profit, did he hit the geese in vain? If you say the bazaar will not close without him, I'd say the peasant's not right for this. For his profit, crossing through the bazaar, going, he'd hit a man like a goose if needed. The geese, however, never considered. They didn't like what he did. Seeing a passerby, they all made noise and accused the peasant's deed. Is there one who suffered this way? Feeling his power, the stupid peasant ran after us, demeaning, thoughtless beating, not thinking how he owed such a debt. Does he know our worth? We are the ones who protected the Romans. They celebrated us with a feast. Not a year passes without being honored. Getting hit as ordinary geese, us going because we ran into a dumb peasant. The passerby said this. That's enough. Cry about your changed state. Why do you deserve respect? Blame the peasant and curse him. Where is the work of our grandfathers? Is it not enough they saved the Romans? Wait, the passerby said. Look, what have you yourself done? We already told of our ancestors' work, or did you not believe our words? I believe that I know your grandfather's story. I ask why I have to respect you. What deeds have you done yourself? I don't care about the work of your ancestors. Us, we haven't done anything. If you're disrespected like that, agree. If my grandfather is good, then respect me too. Hard for you to win the argument. Maybe your elders passed as good long ago, maybe honored and respected for their deeds, not leaving their value for their progeny. Maybe their good passed with them. Your ancestors can't help you from the grave if your own value is diminished. Agree if you are beaten, battered, or slaughtered. After the roast, you'll see your worth. If I'll narrate, I'll go too far. All things need consideration. A strange goose's words can change those near him. Holding a corpse's skin to their face, many Kazakhs think they are beautiful. I've summarized, but I'll stop myself in order not to offend. So there's a play, there's a couple things. With the Romans, he's talking about a covert attack by the Gauls in the 4th century BCE. And these geese notified because they started honking and notified the Romans. They were able to save themselves. Another part, though, is that geese in Kazakh is kazdar. So phonetically, it sounds like Kazakhs, right? So these people who want to look back on their ancestors and say, oh, well, my great-grandfather did this, my great-great-great-grandfather did this, and so on and so forth, saying, I don't care. And then he adds the addendum of, he knows he's offending these people, right? When he says holding a corpse's skin to their face, holding your dead grandfather's skin to your face, like that's horrible, right? So he's getting at them. And then to say, yeah, but in order not to offend, like he knows exactly what he's saying, who he's saying it to. And even though this is a translation from Krylov, so he's using Krylov in a way like Krylov had no intention of doing, right? But he gets to play on that word play. And I think it's just brilliant in the way he uses it.
Yeah. And I think that's as I was going through, I was just writing down notes that struck me from geese. That was the holding a corpse's skin to their face. Many Kazakhs think they are beautiful. Again, that's a potent line.
Yeah, that's a killer line.
And interesting too. I think we've discussed a little bit of the kind of this is like a way reductive term, but like the literature of nascent nationalism, this very present, very today, very contemporary feel of sometimes this literature can start having overtures to, look back at the past. We actually have undiscovered or unappreciated literature that shows our legitimacy because we've always been here. But this is this very present, like it doesn't matter what happened in the past. It's up to us to create our today now.
Yeah.
Which
we got to do this.
Yeah. Which is fascinating, and to the point of it, I'll stop myself of offending on every level of someone who on the outside looking in, the Russian Empire being like, hey, you're thinking about rising up, what's going on here? But also on the other end of someone being accused of what am I not doing enough? I've been calling on all these things, so it's a very precarious position to be writing from.
Definitely, it's fascinating. Another translation that I think it sticks out to me the most. It doesn't quite fit as the title is from Zharovskaya, and it's adapted from her poem from 1843. And she didn't do a whole lot of poetry, so I'm curious how he found this, but it must have struck him in a way. And I'm curious, maybe curious to hear what you think of it as well. From Zharovskaya. Flawless pearl lying beneath the water, precious word lying beneath a thought, an object beneath the water, a storm may stir, a word beneath a thought, a heavy heart may lighten. And thematically, it feels like it's outside of this. He's hoping for these words to hit people, maybe, but I don't see it as necessarily as political. It seems one of the most hopeful pieces in here as well. Yeah, I'm curious. What do you think of it?
Yeah, it's another one that to me when I was going through it, it's I feel like I've said this a lot, but it's really threading the needle on this, at least when I was reading it, between this sense of hopefulness and despair that there is much danger that a storm may stir of this object, this flawless pearl. I'm reading to it like lying beneath the water, being equated to this word, this thought, this idea of precious word lying beneath a thought, that there's something there. There's things for us to uncover, but also we are in a time of danger, right? The storm may stir, but this has the power to alleviate. A heavy heart may lighten. This word, this pearl, as I'm reading it, has this possibility to shine, to be of value, to be of worth later on. But again, not in a time without danger. It's something that I think you nailed it earlier. It's I think some of the most hopeful pieces in here, but not without that very present sense of danger, which is correct for what will to come. He saw it accurately.
Yeah, exactly. One of the most beautiful, I think, in here as well with the pearl. I had another one. Let's see. Horse. I really like this poem, and I want to read this. The history behind it is so bizarre. So I'll read the poem, and then we'll talk about the history of it too.
Yeah.
Horse. My steed, why do you whinny? Why does your head hang, restless, mouth chomping at the bit? Why this, your mane unshaken? Did I not tend to you? Did I not feed and protect you? Did I not praise your beautiful saddle? Did I not tie your silk reins? Your gilt stirrups and silver horseshoes, did I not hammer them? The horse gives its sad answer. You ask why I frown? My ears hear hooves approach from afar, horns blowing, bullets firing. Why I whinny and sigh, days of strolling in fields are few. Even adorned with glittering saddle, I feel respect and beauty dwindle. The unsouring enemy may soon attack, may soon take everything from me, may plunder the hammered silver horseshoes from my feet. I'm worn thin, broken down, soul bared, ill, grieved, distressed. I fear that instead of your blanket, your cold hide will be what covers my sweating sides. So this was originally by Pushkin. But that was a translation of something else too. So this poem was published in La Guzla in 1827 by Hyacinth Maglanovich of the Adriatic province of Illyria into French by the French writer Prosper Mérimée. Pushkin translated it into 1833, but he was notified by Mérimée, and Mérimée made it up. So Mérimée anticipates that this is what someone from from Adriatic province would write. Well, that's what they would think. Makes it up. Pushkin makes it real, and Baitursynov makes it even more real, right? So, I mean, it's fascinating, and I don't know if he knew this or not. How could you, right?
Right.
But I think either way, it works even better as there may not be truth in the original, but there's truth in copies too. And I think it's a kind of a beautiful metaphor for translation too, right? It's like, yes, of course, it's imperfect, but there's something gained. And this gain, you get to realize these poems that don't even exist by these authors who don't exist. It's really, really fascinating.
I mean, it's kind of beautiful in the context of Baitursynov's this repeated push towards looking at today and looking back at this poem, which was a fake in its time, but looking at it now, it has value. It's written. I can take it. I can look at that. It's the history, in a sense, doesn't really matter as much as what we can do with it today now.
Yeah, it doesn't detract anything, right? It almost adds to it. So even despite all that, it's still an essential poem of this whole thing. All right, I got two more, if that's okay.
Absolutely, please.
Okay.
I mean, this was such a fun collection to read through. I was sitting on the couch with my wife, just reading some of these out loud for fun, because I think it was Hoja Nasreddin's Cunning was a there's so I love sitting here listening to you hear you read them.
All right, let's do Kazakhnas. A goose might. Oh, sorry. So let me start. Kazakhnas is just by him. So the first three are translations. This is an original. Kazakhnas. A goose might freeze flying, honking, landing in a dry lake, cooling. A grass fire might break out. Our bodies burned. What remains? Alash's people all known. Who was not measured? Always saying, I'm well. Wellness confined to themselves. Chattering, feigning skilled speech, rushing, pushing, galloping. Unbelted, a slack child coming like half-pressed felt, unfinished. Hunched, old hunters seeking meat, searching, just one more honorable feast. Sincere, they're here and there, counting few to many, simple but generous. Unhelping, many rich misers like boats on rocking waves, so many lie silent, sleeping, moving without purpose or ambition. We line up with them orderly, satisfied with sparkling buttons. What use from your talent, if not struck in the right places? These words, this letter I write with sorrow, no value left, the lost Kazakh. Rich worry wealth, educated worry rank, little worry left for the people. Yeah, this is one of certainly his sadder ones, right? It feels like there's nothing to be done at all, and it's all kind of meaningless, a little nihilistic. And as we talked about those last two lines before, the rich worry wealth, educated worry rank, little worry left for the people. One of my most proud lines of translation of trying to capture that sentiment. And I mean, just what he's saying is, yeah, it's typical of, I think, human history, right? Little worry left for the people.
And it also reminds me of a much earlier poem, To My Kin, which has this line, talent wasted only on yourself, just another meaningless animal. And
Yeah.
you have this, again, this, as you pointed at the very beginning, in the poems that do feel like a conversation, this is addressed at, maybe in the future addressed to a wider audience, but at the time, a very small portion of the overall group who can actually read. And there's this acknowledgement, maybe this sort of sense of, you are talented. There are many talents among you, but to what end are you using them? You're just for your own benefit to write out these things. I mean, you're a meaningless animal. You live to exist.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, I think these are like timeless poems too. There's the political angles and context are so specific, and yet it seems like the never-ending fight, right? Of trying to make a better world, of speaking it into existence, of pushing for that. Certainly relevant to anyone today too.
Yeah. And hope, as well as, like we talked about, the hunched old hunter seeking meat, which is both simultaneously this sense of there are few people who can still provide that honorable feast, as he says, but few and far, and not in a great environment. Hunched old, they're certainly not populous in many, but this hope that there is the simple generosities of people, which is also kind of captured. I think it's Nabek's horse, which kind of has this. It's more of a morality tale, but has within it this interesting. One man has a horse, another richer man wants that horse and takes it under guise of being sort of a religious hermit and a wanderer. And upon the first guy, upon realizing he's been duped, yells like, "Please, when you tell everyone you stole a horse, don't tell them how you did it, because that might get them to not trust these religious wanderers." And the first guy who's done wrong, or so the second guy who's done wrong, realizes, oh yeah, that's right. And there's this line: is there something stronger than truth to the understanding? So even in this character who there is a moral failing, Baitursynov still returns this sense of, it is important for us to, even among these, let's say, relatively simple people, at least the first person is kind of posed as this simple person. The important thing for us is to not do what these kind of talented people who can read, people who are not using their talents as they could. On the other hand, what can you do? You can understand. We can build these bridges of lack of understanding, which Baitursynov seems to see between people on multiple levels from low to high.
Yeah. He seems very uninterested in cleverness, right? He's much more interested in like earnestness and actually trying to like put in the work and make things different, right? To educate, and it's not beautiful or sexy, but it needs to be done, right? And I think especially in the digital social media era, we have a lot of everything's got to be sexy all the time, right? I mean, like podcasts, we should all be wearing beautiful clothes and well lit stuff and all this, or we can just get to the root of it too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and as you say, this elevation of the unsexy. There's another poem, An Invitation to Study, and there's this line: "For Allah, read your books. Lazy servants of God may not be loved." And this of all the things that are exalted throughout the poem, the one that kind of stands out is this love for learning, education. We need to better ourselves. And this pose, the posing of religion, of this like religiosity is important, but how do you serve God well? Well, it's not. What's that? I don't know if this is C.S. Lewis. It's like it's God is not pleased by the cobbler who puts little crosses on shoes, but by the cobbler who makes well constructed shoes. And I kind of see that ethos in here too. That we can please religiosity by becoming better people, by studying, by learning.
Which seems such at odds at a lot of religiosity today, right? I mean, education is never at the center of it, whereas he sees And we've also like conveniently forgot that the Islamic world had the highest education during our dark ages, right?
Right.
Of course, dark ages for Western Europeans, but it was actually like very, very like the height of science and math and all this stuff too for Islamic world. And he sees that as like integral to his future country too. I mean, democracy too. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. It's an incredible piece, and I mean it makes sense given that Baitursynov would kind of take on a role in the Soviet state afterwards. And however you read that, it kind of makes sense for someone who is looking at like we need to build institutions, and hey, maybe this isn't ideal. I mean, I guess you could. I'm not a historian. Probably there's a lot of things I don't know, but someone who's like we're working with what we got. It kind of makes sense for this
exactly.
role. This is what we have. Yeah.
Very practical. He served in a couple of different roles for the Soviet government until it kind of became more Russian ethnocentric, and then he was kicked out for all that. All these previous nationalist intellectuals were killed.
Right. He's initially arrested in 1929. That's around the end when you see these. I don't know if the Korenizatsiya was something that was specifically keeping him going, but that's around that end of that era when you see this pullback from the Soviet state from okay, we need to create socialism by engaging with local cultures, and now we need to top down. This is what it is.
Top down. Exactly.
And there was another one you mentioned that you were wanted to share. Yes,
I really love this poem, A Farmer of Humanity. It's again, so many of his poems are relating people to animals because they live, nomadic society. You're surrounded by animals all the time, and I think this really captures his frustration with the current setup too. A farmer of humanity, I left for the hills. No lake, no meadow to visit in vain. Seeds of my benevolence I dispersed, cultivated, to please the nation of servants. Livestock worked to death, tormented, slaves beautyless in servitude. In sight, my two-legged animal, how much humanity do beasts need? Why did God create the animal? To ride, to slaughter, to beat, to shear, to trot with halter, to be flogged, afraid of your beating, no command needed. Numb to the shepherd's stick at pasture, will the donkey be moved by anything? We've grown deceived, thinking we can polish meat like stone. So those last two lines I really love. Again, it's like one of my achievements as a translator is that last line, right, of mistaking meat for stone, and just the idea of like cruelty and power alone can manage animals and people, and he sees just the flaws of authoritarianism of all this stuff very obviously.
Right. And identifying accurately in like the simple line, afraid of your beating, no commands needed, the psychological dimension that comes in these situations where you no longer need an actual threat, just the implied threat. Right. And I love that line, we can polish meat like stone, which is earlier we've talked about how this is a collection not just for the time, but for future generations, and feels very relevant in an era when humanity we're kind of branding online for jobs, for I don't know, attention, for hobbies and all these things. This who are we is less important than who can we be as a brand. How can we polish this meat into?
And we're censoring, manufacturing, whatever it is. Like we already know the constraints, even though no one gave them to us. We just have to force it through the society. I know, like I remember reading Umberto Eco has suggested that we're in like a neo-feudalist time as opposed to like a late-stage capitalist or any of these other things. And feudalism makes more sense. Who are we trying to impress, right? Like lords? Isn't it just kind of people who own a lot of stuff? I mean, it seems when I first read this, I said, oh, come on, it seems crazy, but isn't it like kind of techno-feudalism? Aren't we trying? We're on the same platforms. We're all trying to do the same thing and do the same song and dance. It's interesting to see these reverberances through history.
Right. Absolutely. And it's something that is, again, like we've said again and again, this hope, this hope that you can do something else, but stuck in this deep kind of despair of we have grown deceived, but simultaneously the hope that it is, this is a thought I have a lot reading. We do a lot of Vasily Grossman, and between Stalingrad and Life and Fate, this discussion of can ideology change a person? Of course, in Stalingrad earlier, Vasily Grossman, it's yes, ideology can change a person. If we don't accept that, we've rejected the Soviet project. But by the time you get to Life and Fate, it's no, it can't. There is something more innately human, which cannot be changed by ideology, which is kind of a hopefulness shared by here, that this is a deception. This is something that can be unlearned. This is not like a fundamental lessening of a people.
Yeah, absolutely. Can I leave you with one more?
Absolutely. No, this is a lot of fun. I love it. Let's keep going. You can read the whole collection if you want. I don't know how much time you have.
we don't think we have enough for that. Well, I'll leave you with the first one, which is author's note, which is always very interesting to title it author's note and to treat a poem as an author's note in verse too. Author's note. Our enemy buzzes around, yellow, long-legged mosquito. Its natural color unchanged, both black, even red mosquito. Circling above them, mocking, flying till wings break. Maybe one will awaken, that relentless buzzing in our ear. I think that captures the whole thing.
Yeah.
That's the whole project. That's his whole life. That's what he dedicated his life to.
Maybe one will awaken. Yeah. You can only hope that it happens before you're swatted away as a gadfly, as a mosquito.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's great. Thank you for sharing all. This is a lot of fun to dig a little bit more into each of these.
Yeah, of course. It's so much fun. I'm glad. I hope a lot of people really enjoy the collection. I mean, it's unlike anything that's available. Not much has been translated from this period. I hope to maybe do one more. We'll see if what happens, if the language sticks in there. Otherwise, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, speaking of, as we're sitting right here today, do you have any upcoming or recent works that you'd like to highlight or think people should check out?
Yeah, sure. I mean, definitely check out Mosquito. It's a singular work from a singular author. Absolutely. I do other things as well. So I have this comic edited volume from University Press of Mississippi, Conversations with Denys Cowan. He was a very prominent figure. He's been doing comics since over 50 years almost. He was just honored at San Diego Comic-Con for the Eisner Award Hall of Fame, which is really cool. I interviewed him a couple years ago, and this collection's coming out in October. The other thing, I just submitted this manuscript on this comic series called Spawn from the early 90s.
Nice.
That's going through Rutgers University Press. So I know these all sound very unrelated, but in my mind, it all makes perfect sense. That'll come out next fall, I think.
Cool. I mean, the Spawn, that's interesting. I'm curious to see when that comes out, what reflections there are on Spawn. I will admit, I've only ever seen the movie. I've never read the comics, and I don't get the sense that the movie was the greatest representation of.
I think it actually is kind of a good representation of how messy that comic is. It's kind of it's got some work to be done on it.
Yeah, sure. I like that description. The movie is representative of it in that it's a work in progress.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, Jake, thank you so much. For everyone listening, you can find links to Mosquito in the show notes to pick it up. I highly recommend it. It was a lot of fun to read, and it's fun to read with people around too. It was more fun when I was sitting there. I read half of it. Kind of usually I read these on my computer and kind of book on one screen, notes in the other. But taking it out on an e-reader to sit on the couch and chat with them with my wife was a lot more fun to throw them back and forth and discuss them a little bit.
Poetry is meant to be spoken. It really is true. There's something about this book. I read all kinds of different books. You don't want to say it out loud, but there's something about this, especially because of the urgency, because of how political it is. It's like this is a man's voice that wants to speak to us. And I think just hearing it aloud is really, really cool.
Yeah, it invites conversation, which is great.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, Jake, thank you so much for taking the time to join with me today and talk more about this collection. This was a lot of fun.
Cameron, thank you. It's been a blast.
And before I let you go, I just want to let you know what's coming up next. We're going to be talking about Ukrainian literature around the turn of the 20th century. Now, that is a bigger topic than I would usually cover, and that's why I'll be joined by some of the editors of a new reader titled Ukrainian Literary Modernism of the 1910s to mid-1930s. We'll be talking to Halina Babak and Yulia Ilchuk about this topic. I've been looking forward to this interview for a while, and I hope you enjoy it when it comes out. To help keep the show independent, you can head on over to our website, slaviclitpod.com. Remember, podcasting is not expensive, but it's not free either. Thank you to everyone who is already supporting the podcast and making sure that we can keep this education free and accessible to everyone, keeping the lights on here, buying the books, etc., etc. As always, thank you. The music used in this episode was Starai Kino by Peremotka. You can find more of their stuff on Bandcamp or Spotify. The links and spelling are in the show notes. You'll hear from me again soon.